We're transitioning into our last group of folks. You might have noticed we planned a little bit longer with the last group, an hour and 15, and we've done that more or less with this next group as well. The mayor plans to join us about 5:15, and then we'll be closing. But we have a very exciting next group, interfaith reflections of the faith community working together, but uniquely around the mutual responsibility of compassion. And that compassion being rooted in the ethic of reciprocity, or what we more commonly might call the golden rule. So how to treat others how we wish to be treated ourselves, and likewise not to treat others in ways we don't wish to be treated ourselves. So I'm very excited about this next reflection, as I have been all day. They've been so good. And to take a moment, as we have all day long, to offer gratitude to the mayor for having this idea and convening it. Gratitude to those who have helped make today happen, all San Antonio volunteers who pulled this together. And you've been seeing those all as our co-hosts, but the volunteer group from San Antonio Community Resource Directory is powering our technology today. You can find them at sacred.org. It's a directory of resources that's offered by congregations, nonprofits, government entities, other groups, specific to San Antonio, so that people can find those resources that are most close and in proximity to where they are needed, by their homes, or now not so much where people work, but by their homes. Really could use some volunteers there, because they're going through all of those resources and services to make sure they're as current, as up to date, given the COVID pandemic that we're in. So this is specifically volunteer opportunity that you can do out of the comfort of your own home, which seems so appropriate right now. If you're able to do that, just go to info@sacred.org and let them know about your availability. And I want to offer one more piece of gratitude, and that's for this very moment that we've been sharing in all day, that it has been truly a gift. It has to me, but I've also received lots of comments from different people about how great the gift is. And so I'm getting ready here to shift to our next panel, our next group of people. But to begin that, I'm going to read a poem that I read at the beginning. I read it at the end of the first hour, and I'd like to read it at the beginning of our last hour. And maybe some of you have heard it or have seen it online, because it's been out there. It was written by Lynn Ungar on March 11th, and it's entitled Pandemic. What if we thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling. Give up, just for now, on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has become clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. I turn it over now to Wyndee. She's going to be leading our last hour and then some. And Wyndee, you're on.
And guess what? I had to unmute myself. That makes all the difference. So I welcome this illustrious group, and some of you are dear friends and others are new to me, but I trust we'll all be good friends by the end of the hour and into the days to come. So with that in mind, there's a significant number of us, and I have adjusted my screen, so I'm hopefully seeing everyone at once. I need Lionel to come on line. I can see he's online, but I need your video self to be there. You go. Thank you, Lionel. I appreciate that. And let's see, I've got Rabbi Mara Nathan, Rabbi David Komerofsky, Russel Krummell, Malii. Do I have Malii yet? I don't think so.
Malii, yes.
Oh, okay, good. There you are. Excellent. Thank you. And Soorma Singh and Lionel Sosa. And I'll call on you as we go, and you can introduce yourselves and your role in this work of mutual compassion in our community. And many of you are leaders in your faith traditions, so I'll let you speak to that. But kind of the parameters for this time together, because there are so many of us, I'll start any question and call on one person, and then anyone is welcome to add comment, but I'll ask if you can just raise your hand so that I can know you're the next person to speak, since we have a lot of people on this particular hour, which is very exciting. So we're glad to see you all. But to start with, I'm going to go across the screen just as I see your faces, asking you to introduce yourselves. So Russell, would you be first, please?
Hello, I'm Russel Krummell. I'm a member of the Baha'i faith community. I am the recording secretary of the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of San Antonio. I was really pleased about being invited to participate in this effort, especially the topic of compassion. I'm really happy to be here.
Okay, thank you. Rabbi Mara Nathan.
Hi, Mara Nathan. I'm the senior rabbi at Temple Bethel. And we do lots of work with I recognize a lot of faces and names in this group, and I'm excited to work with and speak to others and learn about other people's faith. I think, the Jewish community is a strong one in San Antonio, but not particularly large. And it is always really important to be with all the different faiths. And also for our city, there are so many different faiths here, which is I'm always learning new things and new theologies. And I really value those friendships and those relationships that we continue to build over time to better understand what we all have in common.
Thank you. Rabbi David?
Good afternoon. I'm David Komerofsky. I'm the rabbi of Temple Chai, which is a small synagogue on the northwest side of town. We are the same stream of Judaism as Rabbi Nathan and Temple Bethel. We're adherents to the Reform tradition, which provides us a certain grounding and worldview and the flexibility to be able to use our computers on Shabbat for noble purposes. So thank you for the invitation to be able to be with you and to address the current crisis and see how we approach this current difficulty with ancient texts and ancient eyes.
Thank you. Soorma Singh.
Hi, I must greet you in the formal manner that a Sikh should greet everyone. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Soorma Singh. I am one of the faith leaders at Sikh Dharamsal, and I am so glad to be here today. We just finished our weekly discussion with some of the congregation. I'm just really excited to share some inspiration with people today.
And I understand you did that via Zoom, isn't that right, Soorma?
Yes, we did that via Zoom, social distance.
Just being clear about this. Thank you. Lionel?
Yes, I am running a not-for-profit called Yes, Our Kids Can, which keeps parents and schools and their children all connected. And we have been seeing how much, especially we do this in reaching the poorest of the poor families, especially the mamas that don't really know how to interact as well with their children. or be the teachers that they want to be. So we're helping them all stay in closer contact. We're teaching the moms and dads and grandmas how to be teachers to their children while they're there and how to keep them connected with school. So we're seeing a lot of good things happening there.
Thank you, Lionel. And in particular, one of the things that's unique in this group is that Lionel is one of our 2020 Peace Laureates here in San Antonio. And I had the joy of attending that particular event where he was named a Peace Laureate, along with GP Singh, who is near and dear in the Sikh community. Now, moving on to you, Malii Witten, tell us about you.
Hi, good afternoon. Malii Witten. I serve alongside Russel Krummell as a member of the local spiritual assembly of the Baha'is of San Antonio, like that little puppy that I see, Rabbi David. And I'm just hanging out on my porch here this afternoon. Very glad to join you.
Great, thank you. And thank you for helping me know how better to pronounce your name, Malii, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, we're gathered for this day of reflection. And so our first question, hour after hour, and it's been very insightful to hear the answers, is why? Why is it important? Why do we do this? And so the question is, why is it important to have a day of reflection? And you may answer that on a personal level. You may tell us why and how it's important for those you know well and you're the closest to, the nearest and dearest. And or you may want to express, why is it important globally? Why is it important to stop and reflect in the midst of a pandemic? And I'm going to start with Mara. Mara, would you start us off, please?
Of course. If you look at the Zoom chat, there was in the previous hour, there was this written comment that really resonates with me, which is that now that we're all working at home, it's really much harder to create a boundary between our work and our private life. And for those of us who are clergy or work in the faith community, that's already the case. We already basically work 7 days a week, but there really is no, I'm leaving the synagogue or I'm leaving the mosque or I'm leaving whatever house of worship and going home. Everything is, I was joking this morning as I was leading worship after worship in my dining room via Zoom that our dining room has become, Temple Beth Nathan, so like the house of Nathan, because now everything we're doing from the profane to the most sacred is really coming through from our personal homes. So I think just like with the Sabbath, if we don't take time throughout the week, if we don't take time throughout this pandemic to just take a moment to breathe, try to gain some perspective, then the burnout, which I'm sure a lot of us are already starting to feel, it's just going to become more acute, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. And we have to not only give ourselves permission to pause, but remind other people that it is essential to pause.
Thank you. And again, if you're ready to jump in, please just raise your hand and then I can call on you. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to call you out, which is okay too. Russell, please. Russell, you need to, there you go.
Yeah, we were down by Bracken Ridge Park. We were social distancing, just doing our exercise, which I think is still allowed. And somebody it's actually a gentleman in my wife's mama's group. He goes to Lando Library and participates in story time with us. And he just, briefly stopped and just said the most profound thing. I remember, I guess in Shakespeare, it's, sometimes you hear the wisest things just from somebody who's drunk or just somebody who's just passing by. That's kind of one of his techniques. And he just stopped and said, he was jogging and he just stopped for a second and said, it takes something like this to hit the reset button for us. And I just think it's curiously ironic that the smallest, most infinitesimal thing that we know of, in terms of a biological organism like a virus, which is not really, we're not even certain if it's dead or alive, has completely stopped, everything that we do, our civilization, our progress, our 21st century know-how. And it's a really humbling, I think, and reflective moment, because something like that, which is so tiny, has stopped 7 billion people in their tracks. And I agree with Rabbi Mara that it's turned our homes, sometimes as representatives of religion, we put on our garb and we go to our institutions or our places of worship. And so we assume a role, so to speak. But now we have to do that from our own home. So we're naked now, we're bare. This is our homes, and we're showing those to the world. And really that's what we're gonna have to do, I think, to solve these global issues that we have, be they global pandemics or environmental issues, or immigration or economic situations. We can't just put on our official robes and go to our official places of worship. We're going to have to start do it 24/7. Where our homes, our places of work, our places of worship as well.
Okay, thank you.
In so many ways, we're being forced to reflect, aren't we? We usually don't take the time to really, sometimes spend the time with our children and our grandchildren, because we're still doing what we're doing and so forth. But I've got, Kathy and I have 8 kids, and it's amazing how much closer we're just chatting on this on text every day, and first thing in the morning, how's everybody doing? And everybody shares what they're doing for the day, what they plan to do the rest of the day, how their kids are interacting. And it amazes me how many of them are just reporting much closer bond with their children and with their children especially, and sharing pictures of them just spending time with their kids that they many times don't spend because of the hustle and bustle of the day. And one of my daughters was saying, boy, I've been spending all my time just kind of cleaning house, and it's kind of like playing house when I was a little girl. And Kathy and I, we're trying to get our exercise, and we are getting it, just walking every day. And yesterday we went to Brackenridge Park to play a little round of golf. I had seen that the golf courses are, it's a good place to get exercise if you walk it, and to have social distances. You're about 100 or 200 yards away from the next person. But it was full of people the way I've never seen it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And everybody's out there seeming like they're, practicing their social distancing, and yet seeming closer in the conversations that they have, and people just kind of meeting each other in a place that they wouldn't have said hello to somebody before. This morning we went biking over in the Blue Star area, and along the river and so forth. And there's people walking, and there's bikes, and there's young people with their children, and it just, this forced reflection in so many ways is going to make us stronger and closer, and it's going to bring, I think, about a lot of good things, appreciating each other much more. And it's like, who your friends are, and it seems like everybody's your friend now. Everybody's coming together in a way that I haven't seen ever in my life. So there's a lot of good. It's going to change our lives forever.
Well, true. And one of the things that we have to think about, right, is how we frame it. And so let's think in terms of not social distancing, but physical distancing. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. Well, Malii had insight she wanted to share. Malii, share
Yes.
with us.
Incidentally, there's speaking of, what did you call it? Physical distancing. Yeah.
Good job.
Vis-a-vis this social distancing, there's a term that some colleagues came up with called virtual closeness. Yeah. And so I hope that as we go through these days, we can develop what's called virtual closeness. The comment that I wanted to make in response to your question about why is it important for us to reflect touches on my experience suspending work on particular Baha'i holy days. Yeah. So as Baha'is, we are asked to suspend work on certain days throughout the year, certain high holy days. Yes. And I have my own spiritual practice that I do. Maybe I will read some of the texts. Yeah. I will spend some time in prayer. I might sleep late, might do some yoga, right? I might get together and do a devotional, different things. But my intention for those days, right, is to focus on reflection, right? Learning and reflection. And I realize that and I'm so grateful for those days that I take, right, among hopefully others during the year, because this is the most important thing, right? Thinking of what's core to our lives, what's core to our connection between each other, that is most critical, right? And how can we develop our learning about that through some reflection, right? Last point, same in my work life. I do training for work. And so many times I notice that as adults, we are not taking time to stop and reflect. And so I really try to build in those reflection times because that's part of the learning, right? There are so many things that we can be doing at home, right? So I think it was Mr. Lionel that mentioned, people cleaning their homes and being close to their kids. People are also, doing filler stuff, right? Watching Netflix. There's a joke about there's going to be a wave of Corona babies coming, right? Not to judge any of these things, right? But there are so many things that we have learned to fill our time with, yeah, that is less substantive than reflection, right? And I hope that we can spend that time on reflection so we can learn through the different mode in which we're connecting these days and implement that learning once this passes.
Thank you, Malii. And I see that hand, Soorma.
So I'm going to come from I don't know exactly the age group of everyone here. I'm not going to try to guess either, but I will tell you that I am in the university student phase. And, we've had our whole situation with schools closing and extension of spring break and moving to online platforms. And it was already so much to deal with when we were, going to regular classes. There was always so much work and already so many things to do. And just for this to happen, it really knocked us off our rocker. And I feel especially bad for the people who are, graduating this semester. They go, oh, this was supposed to be my time, and this had to happen. But there are so many things that this time has taught me there are so many things that we take for granted. One of the things that I used to complain about personally is, oh, I'm always involved in this. I have this much homework to do and my spiritual life is lacking. I don't really have, in the Sikh tradition, we do this thing called Amrit Vela, which is where we wake up early in the morning, maybe around 4 or 5 o'clock, and we do meditation and we do our prayers and stuff like that. And I used to complain all the time, because I have this, that going, I go to sleep at 4 o'clock sometimes. You know how we university students are, we're up all night cramming and all that kind of stuff. But we don't realize how attached to the world we are until the world shuts down. And what I'm really grateful for is the fact that I've had the opportunity to connect to my spirituality a lot more in this time. And I don't have the excuse to complain about anymore. I went from not having time enough to do certain spiritual related things. I actually got the opportunity to bring Guru Granth Sahib Ji, which you see in front of me, our Sikh holy text, which is revered to us as our king, to my house. So I've literally turned my house into a Sikh place of worship. And I've just spent this time, thinking about, contemplating on the scripture and thinking about its meaning. And it's really, really, really enriching my life. And like I said before we came onto this live stream, I've been getting together with a few people in our Sangha or our congregation, and we take one passage of scripture a week and we sit down and we discuss it and reflect upon it and say, how can this help us in our daily lives? How can this help us in the situation we are right now? And I think taking a day of reflection is so very important for whatever, religious background you're from, or even if you have a lack of religion or spiritual practice. Just find something that inspires you and gives you hope, and then take that and just reflect on it and be grateful for it and appreciate this time. This time may seem like it is, there's obviously certain burdens there that are associated with this time, and people losing their jobs and, not, all those type of things. But it's actually bittersweet. Recognize it for the blessing that it is, because it's very rare that we're ever going to get this time to reflect like this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Soorma. And we haven't met before, so I didn't know that you were a university student, but having been a campus minister in my life, you're my favorite person. That's all there is to it.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that wisdom. David, did you want to share about the importance of reflection?
We're so busy with just being busy that we don't have the opportunity that this present presents, that we have to pause, because our society does tend to value that busyness over calm, and we value results over process. And not being should I put this, I'm not halachically rigorous in my approach to Jewish tradition. I mean, I value the spirit of the law over the letter of the law in my own practice. I found that having this forced reset has been spiritually enriching. That, as Rabbi Nathan said at the outset, when your home and your work are not separate, and we value that separation, especially within Judaism. We value separating Shabbat, the seventh day, from the rest of the week. Well, in a few hours, we'll celebrate Havdalah, or the separation, because you can't appreciate the sacred if everything is sacred, and you can't appreciate the ordinary if everything's ordinary. Like, I wonder if you're always on vacation, you never get to take a vacation. And likewise, when we're at home and always working, and the spiritual demands of the people to whom we're accountable, the people we serve, have just accelerated. And so I'm finding that now taking Shabbat, especially on Saturday, but taking a moment of Shabbat on a Tuesday or a Thursday without feeling guilty. Ordinarily during the week, if I stopped and napped for 20 minutes, I would feel guilty. I no longer, it's been freeing. Let my people go nap. That's my message for Passover this year. I hope that when we're free to let my people go forth from our homes, we don't lose some of that. The last point that I'll make is that it has, I have 4 kids, 2 of whom are in college, or at least were a couple of weeks ago, and 2 of whom are in elementary school. And the 2 who are in college they're in Austin right now. And it's unsettling for them, but it has forced them to do a reset. And the 2 who are in elementary school, who are here in San Antonio in the house with me and my wife, it has made me more attentive to their schoolwork. In the last session, I heard the beautiful description from the Lutheran Church about how giving religious instruction in the home as opposed to in the house of worship is how it's supposed to be done in the first place. And today, it's not just about my kids doing their schoolwork, but my kids who they know coming to synagogue, they're coming to my work, but they often grumble when they have to come for religious instruction, which in our congregation we do on Saturday mornings. But having been separated from their friends and from their peers for so long now, they look forward to Saturday mornings and sitting in front of the screen and interacting not only with their teacher, but with their peers. And it gives me such joy to know that I don't have to drag them. I don't have to drag them out of the house to do this, and that it is something that they look forward to. And they find, ironically, the Hebrew word for congregation is kahal, which means a gathering. And we're gathering, but not in person. And this has turned everything on its head, much of it not for good. but some of it is a silver lining.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, one and all. And this is such the theme, the thread that we have heard all day across people of different faiths and traditions and whatever the boundaries, they're not boundaries. We're hearing over and over again that we share this sense of, yes, this is intense. Yes, this is a time of struggle. And yet there are these gifts to be found in every struggle. And so just tremendous to hear from all of you. Well, shifting a little bit, but knowing that the wisdom that has infiltrated our lives and brought us, as I would say, safe thus far, has a lot to do with what and how we move forward in this particular time. So I'm going to ask, and we may not get to everyone on every question just because we are such a large group, but if you have particular words of wisdom, maybe they're your own, maybe they come from your spiritual tradition, maybe they're secular. What are those words that just kind of carry you through in a time of crisis?
Will we go first?
Sure, I'd love for you to go first, Soorma.
Okay, so within the Sikh tradition, there is a passage of scripture, it's only one line, and I've been telling people this throughout the entirety of this whole shutdown thing. If there's anything to think about, the scripture says, "Pehla maran kabul jeevan ki jad aas," and that means, roughly, accept the fact that you are not permanent and give up the hope of being permanent. Now, let me explain what that means. We all know that we are only gifted a short amount of time in this life. And that being said, that it is very precious. And especially during this time, we're all so worried about everything. And when we forget the bigger picture, we tend to, that's what causes our pain and our suffering. So when we say, first accept the fact you're not permanent, notice that you recognize that you have a limited amount of time on this planet. It's so precious. Then Jeevan ki chad aas, which means give up the hope of being permanent. That being said, we can't go back and fix what happened in the past. The past is gone. We can't do anything about that. And the future, we don't know, to be honest, if we want to be completely honest, we don't know if we have a future. We don't know how long we're going to be here. So living in the right now is what my faith has taught me that is very, very important. And it really has taken me to a state of bliss. And it's an unimaginable bliss that I can't put really into words. I don't know, I can't do anything about what I did yesterday. And tomorrow, we'll let tomorrow happen when tomorrow's happened. But the only moment that I am sure that I have is the moment of right now. And if I let what's going to happen in the future dictate my right now, the future that I'm not sure that I have, dictate the moment that I have right now, if I miss out, I miss out. So what the Guru has taught me is, let's not worry about how classes are going to go. Let's not worry about the economic, struggle that we might have to face right now. I mean, that is something that we definitely have to take into account. I'm not saying don't make plans, but take the time to appreciate the moment that you have right now. Take the time to appreciate the breath that you have right now. Live right now. And when you learn to live right now, there's this overwhelming feeling of bliss that you get, and being grateful that I have this moment right now. I'm breathing right now. I get to interact with my family right now. I get to spend time doing things that I don't really get to do in the right now. So that's what's been guiding me through this whole crisis.
Well, and I think it's both amazing, refreshing, and blessed for you to use the word bliss with regard to where we are right now. So that's a pretty powerful word. And I'm thinking, Soorma, you know, you have a real future as a preacher, best I can tell. Others that want to share, what are words of wisdom that have prepared you to face what we're facing?
Well, for me, it's coming back to the reality that we all inhabit this one earth, and that we're all really dependent on one another, not as countries, not as cities, not even as individual families, but that we're all connected. What happens in one country affects what happens in another. And hopefully more of us as Americans become more aware of that we are not a country that can function alone, that we're not a country that can feel that we're further ahead than anybody, or that we do things better than anybody, but that we are all, as Kennedy said a long time ago, we all inhabit one earth, and we're all mortal. And you know, I think that we're all coming together to understand that, and enjoying this moment. I know that I am. I'm really in many ways enjoying the moment.
Thank you. Malii?
She said, which words of wisdom have prepared us for this moment from our faith traditions? As a Baha'i, and I invite Russel to jump in here if you'd like to, Russel. We have a daily obligatory prayer. You can choose from the short, medium, and long daily obligatory prayer. And I choose the short one. I say that one. And interestingly, many times I find new meaning in it when I say it, right? So it starts off by saying, I bear witness, oh my God, thou hast created me to know thee and to worship thee. Yes, and it goes on from there. It helps me center on my purpose, right? And one of the last lines says something like, there is none other God but thee, right? And so when I've been in the workplace, like a 9 to 5, it's good to remember this boss, this situation is not the God of me, right? And in this moment, this social circumstance, right, is not the God of me. God is still God. God is still in God's place. Yes. That I think has prepared me for many days, right? Just to even meet the next moment of the day, right? Because I am always forgetting these lessons of faith. Yeah. So I think that the daily obligatory prayer is something that has prepared me. And, you know, when I was first drawn to the Baha'i faith, maybe a dozen years ago, it was in part the words and the poetry of the words, of the verses, of the guidance, yeah, that really drew me in. And one of the things I like about remembering the words verbatim, yeah, is that they are better than I am in my own moments, right? They remind me what, you know, nobility, what my nobility is, and what human nobility is, and what, again, purpose I'm here for, right? And I take inspiration from that. Hopefully more than less, yeah, but there's something there. There's another passage that maybe I'll share in the Zoom chat that I came across recently that's much longer, but I found a lot of inspiration from some words that came from an organization called the Baha'i International Community, in a statement they made to the UN in Copenhagen in '95 at a World Summit on Social Development. I found this to be quite, and I'll put it in the chat box, quite reassuring to me, and because this quote, and let me just populate it here. This quote speaks to, in my interpretation, how we need to reflect and re-examine how we're going about this social experiment, this human experiment, right? And how we may need to change the modes of how we communicate, right? So for instance, someone mentioned, I think it was, looking for your name here, Rabbi Mara yeah, who mentioned, yeah, we're all in each other's homes now, right? And a friend on Facebook said something like, I wonder the extent to which the dynamics of social justice will change between us now that we're very much in each other's intimate spaces doing these day-to-day things, right? This passage that I just put in the chat box reminds me of, we need to figure out how we're doing things and how to do things differently so that things will be different. I think something like this is something that I'd like to reflect on, to figure out how is it that what we're experiencing now and what we're taking away from this circumstance can actually transform how we relate to one another, right? Instead of going back to same old once this passes.
Thank you. Thank you. Mara or David, either one or both, like to share with us words of wisdom from the Jewish tradition?
I can't see David anymore, so I don't know what happened.
Well, he's there. I can see
Okay.
both of you.
Oh, okay. Well, so there are two texts that really strike me, at least personally, and I want to say I would imagine David would agree with me that Jews are anxious people in general. So there's been a lot of suffering, and not necessarily my own personal life, but in the history of our people. So how to deal with anxious moments is really something that our tradition has dealt with again and again. So there's a Hasidic teaching that I know we both know well, because there's a folk song that goes along with it, but it's from Reb Nachman of Bratslav. He was a Hasidic rabbi at the turn of the century, and he taught that the world is a narrow bridge, a very narrow bridge, but the important thing is not to be consumed by fear. We often misquote it and say the most important thing to do is not be afraid, but of course it's impossible to tell people not to be afraid. And I have certainly dealt with a lot of my congregants and interacting with them, and also and having members of the congregation reach out to each other to hear that some people are good and okay, but a lot of people are dealing with a tremendous amount of anxiety. So finding a way to acknowledge that anxiety and not say, no, you got nothing to worry about, it's going to be fine. Say, no, it's okay to feel that way, but let's look for other ways to bring some light into your life, to acknowledge that there are some things that are okay, or even really good, that are happening in the world in the midst of this suffering and this uncertainty, is something that has always resonated with me. And right now it's definitely something that I come back to again and again. And then similarly, there's a Kabbalistic teaching, and I've looked for a long time to find out who the actual teacher is. I don't have the answer, but the teaching is very poignant to me, which is the source of our suffering is rooted in the desire to be somewhere other than we are right now. So that's not talking about pain, right? Physical pain, but it's talking about emotional, spiritual suffering. And I know for myself, and I imagine for many people, there's this sense of angst about programs or activities or trips or things that have been canceled, feelings like we're missing out on things. I know my middle son's birthday is next week, and he's not going to get to have a celebration with his friends. He's turning 14. So there's a lot of disappointments that we're all really dealing with, and those are, I think, really minor ones compared to the stress and anxiety that people are experiencing in terms of being able to pay their bills, make sure they have a home and a job, food, all those things. But that's not necessarily suffering. If we, I think, Malii, like you were saying, realize that we are where we are, and our job is to be present and be the best that we can be and be present, and know that the world is bigger than we are and God's presence is bigger than we are, that hopefully that gives us a little bit of space to remove ourselves from our own anxiety and suffering and try to find some relief in that.
Thank you. Thank you. And before I move on, David or Russell, either of you have something you're eager to add?
Thank you, Mara, for confirming my suspicion that we are anxious people. I'm glad to know that it's not just me. I find that picking up on what Malii pointed out so beautifully, that we're more intimate with each other, ironically, now that we're physically apart from each other. There is something equalizing about this, that in Judaism, we're all born wearing nothing, and death is a great equalizer. And in Jewish tradition, everyone is buried, within traditional Judaism, buried in a plain shroud and a plain pine box that you don't take anything with you. It's what happens between the time you're born and the time that you die that we busy ourselves with acquiring things and making a name for ourselves and so on. But we are all equal in birth and in death. And I find that there is something equalizing about this moment, that it lays bare that everyone is vulnerable. Not just that we're all vulnerable to this virus, that there is no inborn immunity, but that everybody is vulnerable to something. There are people who are financially vulnerable. There are people who are medically vulnerable. There are people who are psychologically vulnerable, and everyone needs something. And lest we think that, oh, somebody else doesn't have a problem. I had a conversation the other day with somebody who I think, oh, what does this person have to worry about? Well, what this person worries about is that this person's company is the lifeline for hundreds of employees. And this person's concern is this person doesn't have to worry, about his own economy, but his entire life has been built up around helping other people. And the product for him is not as important as the people who produce the product. And so he bears that concern. So people, we don't think we have to, and don't have anything to worry about. Everybody has something to worry about. It is equalizing. And so the text to which I turn for this is the last of the Psalms, Psalm 150. And the very last phrase in Psalm 150 in Hebrew is Kol HaNeshama Tehalel Yah, usually translated, let everything that breathes praise God, hallelujah. And neshama also means soul, but nishima, the same word with different vowels, means breath. And this is a common trait of beings, of not just of human beings, but of mammals, that we need breath. And this is what the virus strikes, is our inability to breathe. The word neshama also means soul, that it is the great humanizer, it is a great equalizer of all this, that this afflicts our neshama, our nishima, it afflicts our soul, because our soul is the source of our breath. And the source of our breath is universal. Rich or poor, healthy or sick, everybody is vulnerable. And this moment has exposed that.
Thank you. And such gravity in those words, and being reminded of both, that we are all dependent on breath, and that of all things, that's the very thing that COVID-19 is threatening, is people's breath. I know all of us are aware of concerns and people who are ill, whether they're people we know directly or we're once removed from. And that's the great heart cry that I hear over and over, is that need to breathe. And so thank you for those words. Russell, was there anything else you wanted to contribute on that topic?
No, I just reminded me of a quote I have up on my wall. It's just, I guess, a humorous take on it, but it says, life is not the number of breaths you take, but the moments that take your breath away. This is a twist to that. Yeah. Do I have a moment to share a quote, or do we need to move on?
Yes, go ahead. And then we're going to be opening to the chat room here pretty quickly. So go ahead and share your quote, and then we can move to chat.
So I was thinking, because our topic was about compassion, and we talked about the principle of reciprocity. And I just, you hear different things on the news and different ideas about how we're supposed to proceed. Our leadership, or what kind of, are we going to stay, sheltered in place, or even locked down? How long can that be? Are economic questions more pressing than medical ones? And there's a lot of compelling ideas out there about how we're supposed to proceed. And then I read this quote this is from the son of the founder of the Baha'i faith. His name is Abdul Baha, is the son. And he said this, which kind of centered me again, because I think losing my road a little bit in terms of what we were supposed to do. He said, if a member of the body politic becomes afflicted, in reality, from the standpoint of sympathetic connection, all will share that affliction, since this one afflicted is a member of the group of members, a part of the whole. Is it possible for one member or part to be in distress and the other members to be at ease. And it just helped me center myself again, because there are, some ideas about maybe, certain groups should be isolating themselves, the ones that are more susceptible maybe to the virus, and the rest of us, since we're okay and we're healthy, we should move on, and I was just thinking about the idea of compassion, and that's, if you think of compassion being on one end of the spectrum or the continuum, and maybe justice being on the other end, it's really not, the solutions that are being proposed are really not on either end of that spectrum. They're not compassionate, and they're also not just. And maybe that idea of the opposites on the same spectrum is also not quite that simple either. So anyway, I was comforted to realize that, what we're doing, obeying the authorities and the medical advice is going to be good for everybody in the end. And so I'll just put at ease by that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And as we begin to receive comments or chat questions, etc., I want to at least open the floor to ask about particular actions, and they may be rituals that you have found comfort in, things that you appreciate and would want to share as a means or a method to help others. So what I'm looking for are concrete kinds of examples, and I'll start with my own example. I have recognized that as important as it is to wash my hands and make sure that it's 20 seconds, that there's that sense of solidarity with the world in that importance. And I'm really beginning to pay attention as I wash my hands and looking at my hands as I do it, and praying that I have a very set prayer that in my case is the Lord's Prayer. It's 20 seconds. And so every time I wash my hands, I seek to say the Lord's Prayer. What are perhaps rituals or routines other than exercise? And not that that's not important, but we've heard that one. And yes, let's all keep doing that. But anything else that you're involved in? And I'm going to start with David.
Just trying to keep a routine that that mirrors as closely as possible my best intentions during normal times, and that means getting up, I spend an inordinate amount of time working on my hair on a good day, and so I haven't let that slip. But just getting up, getting dressed, shaving, and yet at the same time letting go of my own bugaboos and OCDs and idiosyncrasies. And the kids spend a little bit more time on their tablets than usual. If we're a little bit more lax in bedtime and so forth, but keeping a ritual and holding tight to it as much as possible without letting it, without becoming a servant to it.
Well said.
So mine was not necessarily religious, but I have been thinking about the compassion piece, which is it's really easy to get consumed with your own personal, not only the needs of the congregation, but also of my children, my husband, my extended family, but also really thinking about the small business community in San Antonio, the places that we normally go. Yes, David, to get our hair done, or the gym or the dry cleaner or the place we buy our coffee and all of those places, and really looking for ways to support them, not just with money, but for those who I have personal relationships with, to reach out to them and let them know that they're not forgotten. We have these platforms to speak to the community in a more religious way, but I think that the compassion piece is to remember the humanity of everyone, and that we want to make sure that when this is over, that our city is still vibrant and unique and connected. And I agree with Lionel that in some ways we'll be more connected than we were before, but that's only if we don't retreat, even though we have to physically retreat, that we take the time to think. And I do try every day to, not just check in with my family and my closest friends, but who can I reach out to who could just use that sense of knowledge that other people are thinking about them and caring about them and what they bring to our community and to our society as a whole.
And so that becomes a ritual in and of itself, that mindfulness of who do I need to be paying attention to. So I really appreciate that, Mara, because there's just a wealth of people, and this has been brought out across the day, that perhaps any of us just go through our routine and we don't necessarily think about who's checking me out at the grocery. And now the person checking me out at the grocery is a lifeline. You know, they're vital for what we need. So in those terms, any of the others of you that have some particular practice or action that you would advise or share anyway? Soorma?
I would say, is it necessary? I don't know if it's necessarily a ritual or not, but it's definitely something, like you said, mindfulness, that being content, you know, is very, very important. And I find myself doing this a lot now that I used to didn't do this. When I'm doing an everyday activity in my home, that I otherwise don't get to do, because like I said, typically when we're having a regular, you know, academic year, I leave the house early and I get back late. I don't get to come home and cook. I eat out most of the time. Just being thankful. Like, I was in my kitchen cooking breakfast one morning and I was like, wow, I never get to do this. God, thank you. Just saying that whenever you get a chance, whenever our mind is going to and from all day long, but at the one time that my mind comes to, you know, a stillness, and I look around and I see the moment that I'm in, I feel appreciative, and I say, thank you. That's my ritual. Just thank you constantly throughout the day. Whenever you think about it, say, thank you. So that's what I would advise. Just as simple. You don't have to do any physical action. You know, when you're washing your hands, if you want to put a physical action to it, if you wash your hands, thank you for soap. If you're sitting down and having a meal, thank you for this meal, because there are some families right now who are out of a job and are probably running low on food and can't afford to have a meal right now. Thank you. You know.
All right, and thank you, Soorma. Malii, what would you add to this conversation?
Take myself off mute here and invite Russell again to share in as he'd like. You know, I am, as a member of the Spiritual Assembly, I am elected by our Baha'i community. I am not clergy, yes. I'm just a regular old Baha'i. And I don't believe that we have rituals per se in the faith, yeah? But one thing that I might contribute from our faith to this contribution, and I'm just looking up on my phone here with my sacred app, by the way, Anne. I know she would like that. Is some guidance on Baha'i consultation, right? So again, not a ritual, but some practical guidance on how to communicate together, how to solve problems, how to make decisions, etc. And so this is something that I think that, you know, a lot of people might benefit from. I try to practice this myself in my home life, and I'll introduce it sometimes in trainings. There are several principles, yeah, that are listed here. I'm just reading from a very small print. And this is, again, guidance for Baha'i consultation. There are things like those who enter into consultation are encouraged when coming together to turn their faces to the kingdom on high and to ask aid from the realm of glory, right? So to bring in the divine into your conversation. To this end, they should, in a state of unity and harmony, read holy verses and communes, right? So we're often doing this when we meet as a local spiritual assembly. Tomorrow we will meet, for instance, virtually, and we will start with some prayers, yeah? It goes on to say things like, whenever a participant in the process finds that a previously expressed opinion is true and worthy, he or she accepts it immediately and does not willfully hold to his or her own opinion. You know, general principles like if I share an idea in conversation, it is not my idea. Yeah, it now belongs to the group, right? And that if we are to have conflict in conversation, that the purpose of that the conflict is to arrive at truth, yeah, not to assert our personal egos, right? So there's a whole list of these things. They are practical things that we can do to come at more elevated states, if you'd like, right? And I think that now would be a time, especially to practice some of these things, as we're having consultation about, you know, how we will make decisions in the future. I love what Russell said about how, yeah, in terms of justice and compassion, I don't know how those practices are necessarily folded into different systems decision making. Yeah, but we can do that in our families, right? We can do that in our homes. We can do that with our neighbors, right? On these smaller scales, we can learn how to incorporate compassion and how to incorporate justice, yeah, and how to incorporate consultation that honors the nobility in one another. So that's a practical something that I would share in the conversation at this point.
Well, thank you all so very much. And we have a very special convener, not just guest, who is ready to join us, and that's Mayor Ron Nirenberg.
Hey, everybody. Good evening.
Welcome back.
It's great to be with you. And I can't believe, Ann, I left you today at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I think you were sitting in the same place. So I hope you've gotten up and stretched a little bit.
I got up a couple times for essentials.
Yeah. Well, it's great to see all your faces. So many friends on here right now. And so I'm glad to be back. It's been a long day, but I'm glad to be back.
I wanted to share with you and everyone, I've been collecting like one-liners all day from pieces of wisdom along the way. And I particularly wanted to share this with you, Mayor, so that I know you weren't able to be with us all day. And so, and then I hope that then you will give us your last reflections and close our day of reflection, if you would be so kind to do that. Are you good with that?
Yes.
Our collective we is gonna die and be reborn again. We're all in this together. We're all each other's relatives, people together, taking care. This power of reflection in pandemic viral air. Reflection informs our actions reveal our prayers, and prayer is reflection come round and back again. This is not social distancing. This is social connecting, relational fortitude, spiritual well-being. This is about us, not you, not me. What is the world we want to see? Do our parts. Tie your camel. Trust the rest. Speak. I love you. I'm here for you. One day we'll tell the stories. Plant what we've always wanted. Plant and replant again. Order out some happy, some shalom ringing true. The pieces come together, a balance comes as well. 5 times 5 times of prayer. 5 times 5 times of care. Help of self towards help of others. Life is not all just COVID-19. Patience, slow down, human being, listen. How we learn from others is by what they do, not just what they say. We learn this way. We teach this way. Children grow this way. Little things bring us together. Flowers at the doorstep. Pray together. Keep silence. Reflect. We're all in the same boat. The struggle is real. The vulnerable we are. The whole world suffering, hopeless in the face of this. The marginalized, more marginalized. Face the grief. It is my own, shared with you. Let's sit with ourselves, each and each with each other, authentically, humans being. We don't realize how attached we are to the world until the world shuts down. We are where we are who we are. Let everything that breathes praise that which gives us breath. This affliction, this will not be forever. The sun also rises.
Well, thank you, Anne. So Anne had texted me when shortly after I got off the convening call this morning and asked what I had closed with, because I mentioned that after every digital conversation that I have right now, which is the majority of conversations, unfortunately, I try to end with 2 lines that I think have become part of our vernacular now, which is, we are all in this together, and the sun also rises, which are so important to remember right now. And so I want to read something that I have earmarked and occasionally go back to, because I also start my day. I mentioned on email, it's amazing what you're cognizant of when you're forced to start your day and end your day in the digital world, which we are right now, with physical distance between us. But I start and end with a common meditation from Reverend Galen. And I have this one earmarked. It's actually from Helen Keller, who, if you know Helen Keller, was someone who really had a separation in terms of senses that I don't think most of us can even conceive of. All she had was physical connection. But she said on January 7th, "Be of good cheer. Do not think of today's failures, but of the success that may come tomorrow. You have set yourselves a difficult task, but you will succeed if you persevere, and you will find joy in overcoming obstacles. Remember, no effort that we make to attain something beautiful is ever lost." And so to me, that is the embodiment of understanding our limitations, our physical limitations, but in a very transcendent way, understanding that we are much more than physical distance. Our natural abilities to connect with one another and to persevere are much greater than what we may be experiencing. So I texted Anne a week ago today and told her that, I was concerned because we have all been forced to separate ourselves from one another, and that people around the world are experiencing the same thing. But as she had reminded me, social distancing does not mean social isolation. And as a community of San Antonio, where we are so different in so many ways, we can do a great job by setting ourselves as an example to our neighbors here locally, but also maybe starting a trend to remind people that, especially right now when we're locked in our homes, it's so important that we reach out and connect. And so that's how the day of reflection was born, online. And I'm so grateful because seeing you all, my friends who I can't hug, reminds me also that we've got a lot of work ahead. There's going to be some tough days, but it is in fact true that we are all in this together, and the sun also rises.
Thank you, Mayor, for the day. Thank you all for coming and being a part of it. I hope the reflections continue. The mayor's going to have to leave a little bit earlier than he had planned because he now does 6:10 p.m., right?
6:10 on the networks. We're going to update where we are with this journey that we're on, and how well we are being taken care of by our first responders and our healthcare workers and the teachers and grocery store workers that are keeping life going on for all of us.
Well, before you go, Mayor, this is Vance. One of the things that I want to make sure that we do is to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we're upon. So do a short land acknowledgement, and in this case, water acknowledgement. The land that we're presently on, most of us who are on this conference are sitting in and around the space once known as Yanaguana, which is still known as Yanaguana to many, many people. So we want to acknowledge the land, but also acknowledge the people who are stewards of this land and stewards of the medicine that come from this land. That's land that's still medicinal and still brings healing to us in this place by allowing for us to live here. So I want to acknowledge the Coatecan and Tonkawa peoples who have shared this space with us, and say thank you to them. And then also thank you to you, Mayor, for convening us here.
Thank you, Vance.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you, Mayor.
All this gratitude.
Until we meet again.
Yes. Have good evenings. Hug those you love.
Bye for now.
Bye, y'all.